Now, there have been plenty of individual Labour MPs and hundreds of councillors who have rebelled against Keir Starmer's line on Israel's military campaign in Gaza. But something has just happened in Sheffield which is quite different. This is a report published on novaramedia.com today. It explains how all 31 Labour councillors who sit on Sheffield City Council have voted in favour of a Green Party motion calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. The vote came after 15 Labour councillors told party leadership on the council that if Labour did not vote to back the motion, they would resign their positions, as dozens of other councillors have done elsewhere. This is thought to be the first time Labour councillors have voted for a motion calling for a ceasefire in a public meeting since the Hamas attacks on the 7th of October. Speaking in the debate, Councillor Abistan Mohammed, who is Labour's parliamentary candidate for Sheffield Central, said this. There will only be just and lasting peace when we end the violence and when we appraise the situation on the ground honestly, recognising the historical context. The approach in Sheffield has been quite different to elsewhere, where rebel councillors have generally had to resign. In one northern town, Labour rebels have even formed a new party. Tardily from Tribune tweeted this on Tuesday. New Blackburn councillors who left the Labour Party over Keir Starmer's comments on Gaza have formed a new political party. And that's a group of 9. Michael, new parties being formed. Is this a significant or even new development in politics?
Considering where Labour are in the polls, I don't think Keir Starmer is going to be particularly terrified about this sort of throwing the next general election. I think there are definitely council seats, or it could be very significant. Potentially, you could see sort of Labour lose control of certain councils. There will be some seats, and obviously we need to keep repeating this is the issue of Israel Palestine and the human rights abuses, the war crimes in Gaza is not just a community relations issue. It's not that Muslims don't like the war and Jews do support Israel, right? This is actually an issue of social justice, and I don't think we should talk about foreign policy just in terms of ethnic minority groups. But clearly Muslims do disproportionately care a lot about the people of Gaza and the Gaza war. And so I think what you are seeing is especially Muslim councillors and councillors who have large Muslim populations, and then also sort of left-wing councillors who really care about international justice, who are resigning. The Sheffield situation is really interesting because obviously what you've seen in most places is you've got a considerable number potentially of councillors who are sort of rebelling against the Labour line and therefore resigning, obviously in Blackburn, to form this new party. But in Sheffield, it's interesting that presumably they decided, well, the split would be so big, more than half of us are willing to break the whip here, so we're going to have to all go in. So if you see more Labour councillors sort of actively backing a ceasefire, obviously, it shouldn't be overstated the significance of this, because a local council, people rightly actually say that, Keir Starmer doesn't have much impact on whether or not there will be a ceasefire. That doesn't mean he shouldn't take a position, because quite soon he could have a seat on the UN Security Council when he would. Right. But it's not that him taking a position would have too much of an active effect on what's going on right now. And then if you go down to Sheffield Council, Sheffield Council obviously has almost no impact on what happens now. But I do think that lots of people will be making a very long-term judgment about Keir Starmer and about the Labour Party. This is not something that people are going to forget easily. And so if further down the line, Keir Starmer loses the support of other groups in society, he does something that affects the pro-leave vote in the Red Wall that he's really concerned about keeping, or he upsets, wealthy middle-class people who are annoyed that there's some sort of tax tweak he wants to change, then if he keeps losing these groups, then that will cause electoral problems for him. And I do think that he probably has, for now, really, really considerably damaged, and for the long term, his support among a large group of voters. As I say, not large enough to swing the next election, but a large group of voters. Principally lots and lots of Muslims in the country, but then also lots of people who are on the left or who just really care about international justice. And you have to say, he does seem awkward on this, right? This doesn't seem to be one of those issues where he has completely been able to say, oh, I just don't care, I'm not even responding to this. So say the Jeremy Corbyn issue was potentially one of those where I think when it came to kicking him out of the party, Keir Starmer only saw upsides. Now, you can argue about whether that's right or wrong, but he didn't, there were no meetings he was forced to have. He didn't sort of come out and equivocate and sort of say, oh, I actually didn't say that last week when he did. On this, clearly, he is feeling some heat. He is feeling some pressure, including from some people close to him. Shabana Mahmood is apparently, really upset at the Labour positioning on this, and she is in the shadow cabinet. So there is more pressure on Keir Starmer than on other issues, but I don't expect it to significantly change his position. And I think that's principally because he doesn't think it will decide the next election. In terms of new parties, we have kind of seen this before with Respect. So obviously the last time, it was more significant, wasn't it? Because Labour were in government. It was the Iraq War, which massively pissed off shed loads of people in the country. Again, especially Muslims, but with the Iraq War, it was really a huge broad swathe of the public. Then you had this party Respect, George Galloway, sort of a figurehead in that, and they did take some seats, again, in predominantly Muslim areas, so Bethnal Green and in Bradford. We could see a similar thing here. I think probably because, Keir Starmer is in opposition. This is about statements he is making. I wouldn't expect something on the scale of Respect, because obviously, Tony Blair literally started a war with a foreign country. Keir Starmer is taking a very cowardly, immoral position, but it is on a conflict which he didn't start.